Welcome back to the latest instalment of our summer series, where we are revisiting previous episodes to gain timeless insights. This week, we are revisiting the conversation that we had with Dan, a skilled tissue viability specialist nurse who featured on episode 2. We are talking about Dumbo's magic feather, why nurses aren't plucked from heaven, and why someone has to be the CEO of Disney. So 11 important topics that we're revisiting, tons of great insights. If that sounds good to you, let's jump in.
Yeah, and you see a lot of nurses, you hear in the media and in the news about lots of nurses leaving the workforce and that. I've worked with many nurses who've been in the industry for many decades and many years. So I think it's just remembering why we're doing it in the first place and what you get out of it. I always talk to people, students come in and say, really, you need to. Healthcare is so challenging nowadays that you're never going to make everything right, and you're never going to do everything you want to do. But you need to take away each end of each shift or end of each day something that you've achieved that you're proud of, that you think, yeah, that went well. As long as you can bring one of those home every day, I think you can still say you're making a difference, and that's how you manage it, really. But yeah, it's challenging at the moment. You watch people really struggling on the wards, particularly with low numbers of staff. But that kind of brings people together sometimes, I think.
Yeah. Actually, I think sometimes people do bond in a crisis, don't they? Well, I think often. And also, I think what you were saying about knowing your why, I think it's Simon Sinek who talks about that in his book. And you know, he says, if you know your why, you know, you can get through the toughest times because you always go back to your why. Yeah.
No, that's very true. That's very...
Tell us, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, as a kid, what I wanted to do was be an illustrator or a designer. I loved Disney.
Okay.
So that's what I really wanted to do when I was a young child. So I was always interested in art and drawing, and that's something that I always wanted to do, and that's something I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
I used to watch Disney films when I was a kid, and I remember drawing them all out when I got back, and I wanted to go and work for Walt Disney Studios and do that. That was my dream.
Yeah. And what sort of age were you when that was your dream?
Oh gosh, I don't probably in my, I don't know, 9 or 10 or 8. I would always drawing from a young age, so probably as long as I have a pencil, interested in that kind of thing.
Oh, that's amazing. And did you do art at school?
Yeah, I did art at school, and then I left. After school, I did a BTEC national diploma, so I did H&D in graphic design. So that's where
okay.
Really.
Yeah. Oh wow. And I'm curious, when you were, having those ideas, who were you talking to about your career aspirations or ideas at that time?
I guess it was sort of friends and parents. My parents were a massive input. We didn't have. I do remember having careers advice at school, which is a few years ago now, but it was fairly vague. I don't think we had much input on that at that time. But yeah, mainly family and friends. When you do something like art, it's something that's quite. I guess you showcase it all the time because you're doing it. So I was used to drawing, and then everyone would say, "Oh, that's pretty good, that's lovely." And at school, I was always drawing things for people because they liked what I did. So that kind of affirmates what you want to do, and that gives you that kind of encouragement, doesn't it? That it might be something to do, really.
Yeah. So what happened?
Well, so I did my HDD design in the local college.
Yeah.
And I think the main issue for me was when I was at school and drawing, you kind of like top of your peak, aren't you, really? And you're very good at what you do, and you're used to being like that. So the difficult thing I found when you went to college, especially something like in the arts, is that suddenly you're not better anymore. There's lots of people who are either as good as you or better than you. So I think that takes difficult, and you change your way you look at it. So I enjoyed doing that, but it's quite a competitive market. And I guess I don't know what happened really. I think I finished college, and I kind of drifted about a little bit for a few years. So I did different types of jobs, and I used to still do a bit of illustration, and I did children's murals and things on the side and bits and pieces like that.
Yeah.
But I then sort of I worked in a shop for a while where I finished college, and that was where I worked as part-time in a garden centre, as it were. And then I did a bit of landscape gardening for a couple of years, worked self-employed doing that with another guy, and then I kind of drifted back in the shop, and then that's when I then found my nursing when I was a bit older.
Earlier you were talking about how there seems to be a bit of a, almost a preference to start in the hospital and then go to the community. Is there a preference around starting as a generalist before you take on a specialism?
I think, we have a lot of quite young in their career nurses who want to come into specialism quite quickly. I speak to lots of student nurses who come out and spend time with us and other specialist nurses, and they say, well, you ask them what they want to do when they finish their training, where they like to work. And a lot of them do say, I'd like to come and do your job, or I'd like to be a specialist nurse, or I'd like to do this. So they see the interest of it. It is an interesting, it's a nice role to be in. But I think really you have to have that, at least some degree of general in your training. Because whether that be in community or whether it be in acute, I don't believe for a minute that you have to go and work in a hospital to be a nurse. I think that you can go straight into community opportunities. It's not any harm at all. But I think you do need a bit of general work because you're working with, because everything's connected, isn't it? If you've got a wound, for instance, or if you're working as a diabetic specialist nurse, there's never that thing in isolation. You have to have a good broad understanding of what makes people work and what makes people not work. And so if you haven't got a little bit of a general knowledge of how to manage people and manage different situations and manage different illnesses and the contraindications, then I think you might struggle a little bit. And the worry is that you may become a bit too. Because if you're looking at my own field, I'm looking at somebody's somebody's abdominal wound if they've had a wound from surgery. I don't look at that. I'll always look at why they got it. Why is it there? To make them not happen. So what's happening with their health or what's happening in their lifestyle that's stopping that happening. So I think that you get that with a bit of being around a little while and getting to work in different areas. So I'd always advise. I never advise people not to come into. They must come into the hospital. They must come into the community. But I always advise people to get a little bit of understanding around you before you try and branch off into specialism. You become quite. You'll become quite in your career. Really, I think you're not getting.
Yeah, and I think that I can imagine it would almost limit your options down the line. If you start with a broad foundation, not only is that going to have potentially better outcomes for the patient, because you might spot something that otherwise you might not know about, but if you've got a broad base, you could go off in one specialism, but then perhaps decide, actually, I want to try a different direction. So I can imagine it's really, really beneficial.
I think so, and because I've been, my specialism is very specialist in a way. It's very niche. Wound dressing there is quite a certain channel, but because I've had a long good career in the community, I've managed district nurses, I've managed people, I've also done teaching and training. I still have wide avenues ahead of me, so I could go off in different roles within the hospital or the community if I decided that's where I want to go in my career. So it's just given me a better background, really. So I'm not stuck in one position. I can then move on and use the skills I've gained, really, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
I don't think it's been a difficult 20 years. I think I've enjoyed it. There's been lots of challenges, but I've always sort of worked my way through. I think it's different as a male nurse as well. I think when you come into the profession as a male, it's different because it's still a very female-dominated environment.
Yeah.
And nurses, but you do see a lot more male nurses coming into the field now, but they're still outnumbered by female nurses and lady nurses. But I think that's something to adapt to and work with. I've never had any issues with the people I work with, and I've always enjoyed working with the teams. I think what's right always smoothly is I've always worked around good people. I think there's lots of really good people that you work with, and I think the teams sharing does make a big difference. And I've got to a point now in my career where I'm the lead man, the manager, and I've been able to use my team, get my team to where I want it to be. And I've worked with lots of, and I work now with people I've worked with years ago and people I've worked with in different jobs. So we kind of come back together to create something good, and I think that does help. It's great. It's a great job. I think the teamwork and working with people, when I look back on what I've done in the last 20 years, I always remember the people that have affected me along the way. That's really good.
Yeah. And if you think back to those challenges and the most recent one being, you know, COVID and the pandemic, what have you learned from those challenges?
I think it's I think you've just got to carry on, really. I think I've learned what we just carried on. So I think that you come together stronger as a team, and I think you have to work together and understand each other's fears and worries. And I think the best thing with nursing is if you work as a team, is you won't all be doing the same things at the same time, and certain people won't be doing as much situations that you may be putting yourself into. But you have, as long as you've got a broader understanding and a respect for each other, and that that's not their time to do this or that time, I think that definitely helps. So I think we got through well as a team. My wife's in healthcare as well, so we could work together as well, which made it more stressful in some ways and then less stressful in other ways. But yeah, I think we just managed to get through it, really, and then we saw things carried on. We just carried on, really.
Yeah. And for you, what are the key things that make for a great team?
I think it's really important to surround yourself. I think it's just mutual respect is the most important thing. I think as long as you understand each other. I'm quite lucky now. I work with people that I have worked with for some years, and met some of the people I worked with years and years ago. So you have that already, that ingrained respect. I think there's several things that have to be worked as a team. I think you have to look after each other, but you also have to make sure you service. The service that you provide has to come at the top. Your patients have to put their care has to go first, and then you have to look after each other. I think where teams, I've worked in teams where it's too much the other way, if you see what I mean. So either they're putting too much into the service and not worrying about each other, or they're looking after each other, not worrying about the job in hand. So I think you have to find a good balance. I think when you find that balance, that works really well. But healthcare is a really good place, I think, for working as a team. It does bring you together. And things like COVID and things like patient cases that are really stressful and difficult, they make you stronger as a team. And I think that's quite unique to healthcare in some ways. I think we see things and deal with it that you don't in other areas of industry. And I've worked in different jobs before. It's never quite been the same as I do now.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Gaining as much experience as you can, I think, is really important, and and working with people as much as you can. So looking at, we've got students coming into us at the moment who are doing their health and social care courses in the college. So they're all about 17. So they're getting a really good grounding into that nursing and a good window into it. So they're getting at 17, they're getting exposure into a hospital, and they're working within my team, which is really good. And they're also working in general wards, and they're working with other specialists and therapists and physios and things like that. So that will give you a good eye opener, because I don't think everyone knows what healthcare is and what a nursing role is until you're in it. Yeah, we might have a vision of what it might be. I think when I was doing training, I remember everybody I'd say I was a nurse, they're going to be a nurse, they would think I was watching people and that kind of thing. And that's what nursing was for most people. Yeah. Pretty much caring for people, like part of the role, but it's everything in between. So I think getting as much exposure is what I say when you're younger to it as you can, so you really know what you're getting yourself into, and it is something that you would like. I think I think there's lots of courses now in college. I don't think you have to be so specific with your courses you're doing. I don't think health is really good. I think nursing is such a broad spectrum of work and career, really. I think you can do lots of things will fit into it and become quite useful depending what you do. So I think it's try and think about those. But maths and sciences are really important. I think I did okay in my GCSEs. years. I wouldn't say I was a A-star student in the slightest. I did a lot better when I was doing my training on the job. So my qualifications later in my career were much better and more impressive than ever they were when I was younger in my career. I got through and I was out. But it's just work hard on those, I think, is important.
Yeah. Moving away from technical education and training, what personality, character traits or talents do you think are, make a good to have if this is something you think you might like to find out more about?
I think, like I say, despite all the technical stuff, and you can get we have lots of people going to research and really, really intelligent people working in healthcare. They're amazing. But it is a people job at the end of the day. So I think you have to be able to talk to people and communicate with people and make relationships. So I think that's really important. So I think if you enjoy talking with people and working with people, I think that's a good start, really. I see lots of very good nurses, but they're very sort of, they don't communicate as well. I think being good at communicating is really the best. Is the one that really communicate and make people feel at ease. So you have to have a degree, all the other aspects as well. But I think it's a people job. I think you really have to be good with that.
Yeah.
I think you're
very, absolutely.
I do think you're exposed to lots of very sensitive information, and people will talk to you and confide in you and tell you it's their biggest worries and their fears. So I think you have to have a degree of good character, to be honest, sort of have a genuine sort of one. I think most people that I've worked with, on the whole, kind of care about other people and they want people to do well. And I think that runs across the board. There's not many people in nursing. There's some strange characters you work with, of course, as there is in any job you work with. But on the whole, I think deep down people do care, and they show that in different ways. But I think that's important to want to make a bit of a difference.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm hearing good communication skills, able to build relationships and connect with people. I'm guessing empathy, really important as well. You mentioned integrity. Honesty and integrity, and being somebody who is a caring person. You've got to want to help people, right?
No, I think so. I do think so. I think it's a job for that. But there's lots of, I think years ago when I trained, it used to be seen as more of a vocation. So you'd be, nurses would be plucked from heaven, and that was what they were supposed to do, and that was where they were, and they did it because that was what they were meant to do, and they were kind of born to be a nurse. And I don't really agree with that. I've never agreed with that, and I think I've found it a very interesting career where you can go in so many different avenues and learn, and I think it's a really good place to grow and develop. So I think that it's certainly you can learn to be a good nurse, and I think you can be, and I hope that I've become over the years, and I've learned how to be better around people and how to work with people. But as long as I think you have to have a little bit of a foundation of being able to talk to people, have a bit of a sense of humour, and be able to get on with people. I think is the first step. If you can do that, then you're on your way, really. I think.
Yeah. Okay. And not too squeamish. You mentioned earlier.
Yeah, not too squeamish. I guess helps, because you will see you'll see all sorts of things. Although you will you get used to all that.
Talk to us about the importance of role models, mentors, sponsors. How important have they been to you in your career?
I think they've got me through my career, really. I think when as I say, I've been lucky to work with some brilliant people, and I think even from my early days, student nurse and newly qualified nurse, there were people I worked with back then 20 years ago I still think about today, and I still compare myself to them. And I've worked with people like that throughout my career, and you kind of think, well, is that how they would behave, or is that how I see myself against them? So I think that's great. I think leadership is what's really needed in the NHS, and I think in lots of jobs. But I think strong leaders, and I think the people that have been strong in my mind are the people that I sort of remember, and not necessarily the people that leaders aren't necessarily the people who are managing you. If you see what I mean, they're not necessarily your line manager. It could be other people in the team that have experience, and just the best people, and I remember several nurses I work with, and everything's going wrong. Everything, the caseload's getting unmanageable, the referrals are piling in, the people are really poorly, staff are going off sick, and this particular person, or people I can think of, would never seem phased. They'd never be stressed. They'd sit down, they'd look at it, and they'd think, right, let's deal with this. They would never raise a sweat. They would be fantastic. And that's how I always hoped that I would be. I always wanted to be that manager that never seemed to be panicked or phased by anything.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're like that, then everyone around is calm. Everyone deals with things, deal with anything. But if you see managers and leaders that start to panic and crumble when it's stressful, and it is often very stressful in then that doesn't help. I think that makes everybody a lot worse. So I think strong, just somebody who's calm and collected is really important.
Yeah.
And those are the people that I remember through my career, really.
Yeah. It's almost that constant, isn't it?
Yeah. You just feel relaxed, don't you? You just feel, that they feel like I've often compared managers and people to Dumbo's magic feather. I've always said that nobody really needs them, but while they've got Dumbo's magic feather, they feel relaxed, and then they do their job really well. As soon as you take the feather away, then they suddenly crumble. So I think people rely on people, that calm, that steady calmness. And I think, well, actually, while so and so is on shift, and I've had that when I've been a manager and it's been people that worked for me, and I felt, well, actually, when so and so is on shift, I feel like everything's okay because I know they're going to be calm. I know they'll deal with what needs to be done, and everything will work fine. No, they're not I'm their manager, so I shouldn't be. But that's what good people are. Good role models should be.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Are there any other factors, looking back, that you think helped you, become the success you are?
I think it's just getting out there and taking on as much as you can. And I think I've always just grabbed every opportunity to do something different that I've ever done. I've worked across various areas across the county, really where I live, and I know people quite well. And I always think if you connect, I've never been a great one for constant emails and things like that. I always like to talk to somebody. Nowadays, it's very challenging to do that because you're working where you work with teams and you're doing lots of Zoom links and you're doing lots of emails. So there's ways around it. But I think if you want to get on, you need to make sure people know who you are. And the best way to do that is to pop down the corridor and speak to them. So don't always rely on people just to come to you. And go and speak to people and get them to know what you're about. If you want to progress your career, I think you just need to get out there, really. And that's the same in any industry, really, isn't it? But things don't just fall on your lap. I think you have to work hard.
Yeah.
I've always taken every opportunity to grow and keep moving and keep doing different things, and don't always stay in. I've always moved roles quite quickly. I always had a bit of a 3-year rule, so I changed my post in about 3 or 4 years just to keep myself fresh. Because I think after a few years you become a little bit comfortable, don't you? I've been in my current role for about, I'd say, I'm a long time at the moment in that job, longest I've been in a role. But yeah, I think you've got to keep moving, especially in your early career. Don't stand still. Don't be afraid to fight, to jump off and do something different. You'll grow from it. You'll really learn.
Yeah, and it sounds as though I get the sense, Dan, that you're a lifelong learner and grabbing every opportunity to learn. And what's the saying? Kind of do or die. So if you don't kind of take those learning opportunities, you would end up just getting a bit stale. So I think that's a really great example of that for us.
Definitely, yeah, and I think when you're in a career, when you're in a stressful job as well, it's easy just to come home and not have to think about it and just do your job and then move on. I think, and in some ways that's lovely, and we'd all like to do that. But I think in other ways you do miss out on a lot because a lot of the things that I've got now is because I've done all these different things in the past. So pushing yourself to take on that opportunity to do that extra bit of course or to stay and do this, it doesn't have to be a long-winded thing, but just picking it as much as you can. You become a bit of a snowball. You pick up things, roll down the hill. So I think the more you've got, and then you'll look back on your career, and it just gives you more opportunities. I think it really does. So.
Yeah, compound learning, I call it.
Definitely, yeah, that's good.
Okay, so people who would like to, who are thinking, this sounds like a great career, I want to find out more. Firstly, what advice would you give that budding nurse? And secondly, where can they find out more?
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, there's lots of education. We have education teams in the hospitals. We've got staff that work solely with education. So I always I go back to always get yourself out there. So I think the hospitals are so, healthcare is such a well-populated population of people, isn't it? So most people know somebody who works in a hospital in some shape or form, whether they're a nurse, a doctor, or whatever they are. So talk to people and have a word, because it was the talking to my family that got me into it in the first place. So ask them what it really is like. Ask them what they like about it, what they don't like about it. I think the problem is if you read the media, you do tend to hear a lot of doom and gloom about people leaving the service, and there's a lot of disgruntlement about. I wouldn't like to get too bogged down in that. I think you need to make your own decisions on things. And but speaking to people, talk to your local colleges and your schools about links into them. There's lots of I know that there's been lots of open days and things where they've had different careers, and NHS certainly trying to get in there. So talking to your local training teams in the hospitals will help. And college is probably a good place to start, because they'll have all those links, work with those people. But I think the more you kind of start talking to people and getting a real idea of what it's really like, don't be too biased by media or by anybody else. It's making your own decisions on it, I think, really essential.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. What do you know now that you wish you'd known, when you were just starting out?
I don't know. I think I've been quite lucky, really. I think in 20 years, I don't. If you could say, would you have changed something in your career? I don't think I would have done. I love working in the hospital now, which I never thought I would. So maybe I would have got a little bit more. I don't think I would have gone straight to the hospital. I still would have stayed in the community. I wouldn't have changed a thing about how I did my career. But I wouldn't have been so afraid to embrace things about the hospital earlier on. So I would have opened my mind to ways of working. I guess that's the only thing I would say. But no, I don't. I think that everything worked out as it would, and I think I've done all that I thought I could do. But yeah, I think just be open. Perhaps I could have been more open to other ways of doing things and embraced more. I think through my career, I've always been quite insular. So I've looked after my team and my caseload, and I've never branched out to other areas and other locations and localities and sort of thought, well, this is how they're doing it. So perhaps I would have looked at that more and networked more, I guess, which I did later in my career. In the earlier days, I stayed like that. But yeah, so I guess that's what I'd say.
Yeah. What would you say to that kid who was drawing those Disney pictures and wanted to be an illustrator?
Well, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I still do a bit of illustration now, so I think when I was younger, a lot younger, it's one of the few. The joy of being younger like that and wanting to be an illustrator for Disney is that you chase your dreams, don't you? And anything's possible. And I see that in my daughter now, my younger daughter. Anything's possible, whether you want to be a movie star or an illustrator or anything like this. And I think that's really important part of career and growing. I think what you need, what that teaches you is actually you should chase things, and anything is possible, really. And it didn't quite work out for me, but I've kept that mindset throughout my career, and I've always chased things nerves of what I want to do, and I got it. And I think you get it because you learn that. So I think if you want to be an illustrator or an animator for Disney, then you should try and be as best as you can to be the animator for Disney. Because if it's going to work, it's going to work, and it's going to be amazing. There's always your career snakes and changes through time, and I think that always you might get surprised that you start on one tangent and then you end up moving off into something else completely. There's somebody else I worked on my college for who's now a nurse down the corridor from me as well, another specialist nurse. So must be something
really?
You never quite know what. So yeah, no, I don't. I'm glad I did my graphic design, and I'm glad I did all that, because those are all, like you say, they're lifelong skills. I still do bits and pieces now.
Yeah.
And it's become less of a career, but more of more something that keeps me sane sometimes. So I think those early things, you should always chase what you want to be. I don't think you should stop. Don't be boring. Carry on doing it.
I'm in total agreement. You reminded me, one of my friends who I used to work with, she's American, and I sometimes think that the Americans receive that message perhaps more than the Brits do. You know, anything is possible. If you want it, you can have it, kind of thing. And I remember she told me she wanted to be the CEO of Disneyland. And I thought, wow. And when she was a kid, I thought, wow, I didn't know that that was possible when I was younger. So hopefully this is going to help, the young people of today know that anything is possible, and you've just got to go for it.
Yeah, because somebody's going to be the CEO of Disneyland, aren't they? So it's got to be somebody. Yeah. So somebody's got to chase that, and they'll get what they want. So, and you might not get exactly that, but you might get something very similar, or something you didn't even realise was as good. So yeah, I think that's important. Yeah. The Americans have got on that in some ways, I think.
What is your favourite inspirational quote or expression?
Gosh. I don't know really. That's yeah. I don't know really.
Or what do you tell your daughter to motivate her or inspire her?
Well, it's like we go back to say, it's just if you be passionate about what you do, love what you do, I think is a really good one. Really, I guess you're going to look. That's quite a good broad quote. But I think if you love what you do, then that's it. You're made up. You spend so much time in your work. You spend more time at work with your work colleagues than you probably do with your family. You see some of your family members. So if you love what you do, then I think that you'll see the way, bad and good. And that's the same in anything. It's like relationships, isn't it? It's not always good. It's not always something rocky, but actually it works. And I think that's the same. So I try to tell people that look for what they love and love what they do. And I think that's a good one, really, in any career.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really hope you enjoyed revisiting episode 2 and those timeless insights that Dan shared. If you gained any value out of this episode, please subscribe wherever you enjoy your podcasts. And if you have any questions, comments or suggestions, do get in touch with us. So until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and have a great week, whatever you are doing. Thanks so much.